What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? All right, cool. So I know some of y'all are probably thinking, man, I've only been in tech for like a year, or I'm trying to get into the space. How would I actually have a voice, a brand, a way to leverage my experience into making money, as well as creating opportunities? Being a personal brand can get you hit up by recruiters, hiring managers, et cetera. So I definitely want you to expand your mindset when it comes to this topic, because Cyrus, before you started doing content on tech, how long were you in the tech space before you started talking about your experience and then created your brand off of it?
So I was only in the industry. So I started my first day in tech October 4th, 2021. And it was February when I first started talking about it online. So roughly 4 months, and it went crazy.
Yeah, because what you guys understand is your experience of a day in the life working to become a software engineer, working to become a UI UX designer is going to be super relevant to hundreds of thousands of people that are in the same position as you, and to watch your progress, watch you land that first job, watch you be successful at that first job. It's inspiring, but it's also educational, and that's going to have a brand that really, you have a brand that people really follow. It's authentic, and they can actually learn from, and they can learn from your mistakes as well. Being a human and highlighting your mistakes is as important as highlighting your successes. So a little bit about me. I've been in the tech space since 2006. Started my career off at IBM. So I was in tech before Black in Tech, and breaking in tech was like a cool thing. And then during the pandemic, I got invited to this app called Clubhouse. Started speaking on stage about software sales, which you guys just heard about. And it got really popular. I went from 0 to 30,000 followers in like 2 months. Then I started putting recruiters and hiring managers on stages and having them talk to people like yourselves about roles. We got hundreds of people jobs in tech. So that was my organic move into being kind of like a tech influencer. And what that's provided for me is some amazing connections, like all these stages that I'm able to speak on. But it's also created monetary opportunities as well, where I was making like 5 figures a month with brand deals, et cetera, all those type of things. But the guy I'm going to be interviewing today has been going crazy. And if you're not familiar with Tech is the New Black, I'm just Cyrus on Instagram. I definitely want you to get familiar. Make sure you follow him after this session so you can see everything he's talking about in application. But I like to start with like the wins so people understand like who they're listening to. So in terms of like success, can you talk about the amount of people that you have in your community, the money you've been able to make from just sharing your tech experience 4 months in, like you mentioned before, and where you've gone to now?
Yeah, I'll actually say something I've never said live before. My first month with brand deals, my very first month, I did about $13,000. And that was aside from my salary in the tech industry. And when I started doing it, I didn't even think it was going to be a thing to make money from. I just want to help people. And so that was the first month, and the first month was the worst to this day. So that 13,000 was the very worst that we've ever done. The best we've ever done was it was around the time I was in Miami. The best we ever did was $143,000 in 1 month. And so on average, what we tend to hover around is between $60,000 and $90,000 a month. And that's from sponsorships, brand deals, affiliate, all of that stuff. But for example, I have one affiliate deal. I haven't promoted them in roughly a year, and still like autopilot every single Friday, and you probably know the brand that I'm talking about. Every single Friday, I get an email alert of them saying, hey, a payout is being sent to you. It's going to be received by Monday or Tuesday. Again, I haven't promoted them in about a year, and on average, I get between $700 and $1,500 every single week. So for example, today, as I was getting ready to come here, I got an alert. It was like, hey, payouts on your way from this brand is $843. Now, that's not a lot of money, but when it's a brand you haven't promoted in nearly a year, and on average you're making between $4,000 to $6,000 a month, that's pretty dope. But in terms of the other factors, the things that I would say matter a bit more, when it comes to actually helping people get in tech, It's somewhere near, it's very hard to track because there's a lot of people that don't tell you until a year later. It's plenty of times, like last year when I was at Diversitech, a couple people came up to me and were like, yo, I'm in tech because of you, and they told me their story, and I'm like, why are you just now telling me this? But sometimes people get excited, they get in the industry, and it's like they're just focused on, doing what you should focus on is actually just doing your job, growing and scaling. But it's somewhere in the ballpark range of 7,000 to 10,000 people we've been able to help to get into the industry. Now, when it comes to our community, we have a tech networking community it's nearing 7,000. Right now, it's just a little over 6,000, but we're projecting that by the middle of April, we'll be at about 7,000 people.
Got it. Okay. So I wanted to share that first because I want you to understand the, advice you're getting, where it's led to. So it's not just like fluffy advice, but now I want to get into like the tactical of like, all right, you're starting from nowhere. What are the first steps to get to where you are currently? So the first step is figuring out your why. So what motivated you to even start promoting tech content, and how did that evolve into what your brand became?
So I'm gonna keep it a stack. So I got in tech, and of course it's interesting. Like, I had straight tunnel vision, which you should have. If you're looking to get into the tech industry, please don't be one of these people. I see people oftentimes trying to get in tech, and then I look at their social media, and they're doing all this other random stuff. They're posting about different blog stuff online. I'm like, you're not really you're not tunnel vision right now. You're still trying to live life, but on the side, try to get in tech. So I had tunnel vision. So by the time I got in the tech industry, I was, of course, super excited. That lasted for roughly probably my second paycheck. And I remember going to the gym like 6 a.m. in the morning, which I don't go to the gym that early anymore. I need to get back to that early. But I remember going to the gym at about 6 a.m. in the morning, and in between sets, this heavy depression hit me. And it was depression like I had never felt before. And in my mind, I'm a very logical person. So I'm trying to think through, why am I depressed? Is this something I ate? Is it, what's going on? Life is good. I'm in the tech industry now. I'm no longer stressed about finances. And I realized the reason why the depression hit me was because for the first time ever in my life, I was no longer escaping poverty. For the first time ever, I had nothing to really chase anymore. I was just like, okay, what now? And, I'm a, no disrespect to anybody. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. And I had a conversation in between sets with God, and I was like, God, what's going on? And what I felt God spoke to my heart was now it's your purpose to help others. It's not about you just getting in this space in your life. It's I brought you here so you could help others. And so that's what initially led me was this notion of, okay, and at the time I had a relatively large following. I'm nowhere near what it is now. And so I was like, man, this is going to be really weird talking about tech stuff. This was completely night and day for my content. My content before was heavily faith-based and heavily relationship stuff, trying to help, men and women relationships. Y'all know how crazy stuff is now. And so I was like, man, this is going to be really weird to do a complete 180. But luckily that entire year while I was working to get in tech, I just absorbed myself in the industry, learning, I read, Elon Musk's story at the time, the everything story, Jeff Bezos' story in Amazon, Bill Gates' story. I mean, all of the big wigs in the industry. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start talking about it. And I thought it was going to be really weird, but come to find out, people don't want to be broke. People want to make money. So as soon as I started talking about it, it just went crazy and it exploded. And then from there, we've been just trying to hold the reins the entire time.
Yeah, so in terms of type of content, what kind of content did you start out with? And what advice do you have for people that are I don't have any Instagram followers. I don't know what kind of formats or approaches are going to be really popular or help grow my brand or my page. So talk about the, all right, I'm going to start talking about tech. How'd you figure out your voice in terms of how you posted content on Instagram or whatever channels that helped you get to where you're at?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to say something that most of you probably don't know. People are starting to talk about it right now. Followers don't mean anything. It's a vanity metric. It's a straight up vanity metric. So you could have I know people with a quarter of the following that I have that because of their content and the algorithm and all of that, they make triple what I make. And I know people with literally over 1 million followers where they owe me money because I've had to lend them money plenty of times. So followers is a vanity metric. It doesn't mean much. What truly matters is you having a brand or having a niche, something you've tapped into. So I want to say that to encourage anyone that if you're a person who's like, man, I just got like a couple thousand followers. I'm sure we've all seen it. There are people with just a couple thousand followers where you look at a bunch of their content, they got hundreds of thousands of views, especially like on YouTube. I see YouTubers that constantly have hundreds and thousands of views, but you look at their subscriptions and they barely got 10,000 subscribers. And so understand, don't get caught up in the follower, the vanity metric stuff. It looks cool that, okay, people follow you, all of that, and that's why sometimes people see me, they're like, whoa, you got all these followers. And I'm like, it's cool, but really what matters is what are you doing with it? So I want to give that piece as an encouragement to people. Now, when it comes to finding a platform, let me say this also as encouragement. Please don't kill yourself trying to master every single social media platform. Realistically, you should keep it to one or two platforms, preferably platforms that tend to look like they have some staying power. So you probably don't want to jump on you probably don't want to jump on, no disrespect, you probably don't want to jump on like Snapchat right now, obviously. And so it's like you want to kind of like look at a platform that has longevity. TikTok, question marks around that, but it looks like they're going to be here to stay. Instagram is going to be here for a while. YouTube, LinkedIn, of course, they're a behemoth. They don't realistically have much competition within their lane. And so you want to find 1 to 2 platforms you could truly kill it and crush it on. When it comes to you determining the type of content you want to make, and I know some people might hear that and be like, oh, just tech content. That's still broad. That's incredibly broad. It's like your tech content, you could be a tech reviewer where you review technology. Because technically, if you type in who's the number one tech influence in the world, it's Marcus Brownlee, MKBHD, if anybody's seen him on YouTube, where he reviews technology. And so I'm seeing like a bunch of people here. I know I keep wanting to shout people out, but let's stay focused. So you want to find like what your brand or what your niche is. And understand whatever thing you want to do, if we're talking like money, there is money in that. If we're talking value, there is immense value in that. And so don't feel caught up on, okay, well, this is what Cyrus does, or this is what Shay does, or this is what Veronica does. It's like, truly look at what you want to do, what you want to lean on. And then I would say from there, you want to look at, okay, what is your content style? So I'm actually working right now on trimming down my content style because mine is kind of a bit all over the place. But realistically, you want to look into, okay, do I want to do like kind of sketch comedy stuff on social media? Or do I want to do things where I am just reviewing a topic or I'm reacting to news of something that's happening in the industry? Or do I want to just straight up give tips and knowledge, whether it's you actually speaking or is you just kind of doing a thing where you're kind of pointing at stuff and people are reading the captions on the screen? So you truly want to figure out your content style. But my belief is that honestly, you should try just about everything to see what feels good or feels natural to you, but also to see like what does your audience or community resonate with. Also, understand that when you start, you're going to suck horribly. And if you're a person who doesn't like making content, 'cause I run into people like this all the time. They're like, it's not really my thing. It's similar to working out or fitness, where no one, when they start working out, like when you legitimately are working out, no one likes it. Especially the next day when you got that DOMS, the delayed onset muscle soreness hitting you, you're like, hold up, I'm not really sure if I should keep doing this. But as we all know, or at least most of us know, whether you're a person who runs or you're a person who's into fitness, after a while, and it doesn't take that long, it low-key kind of becomes a bit of, like addicting to where it's like you actually like it so much to the point you almost even like the soreness a little bit. And so making content is very much so the exact same way. Whether you're a person where, you're like, oh, I can't make content because I feel embarrassed doing it in public. Eventually, you forget people are there. I could make content at the airport, set a tripod up, and my mind doesn't even think about the people walking around. I'm like, whatever. Eventually, you become incredibly comfortable. It's one of those things, as we talk about even, getting in the tech industry, as people talk about imposter syndrome. Eventually, as you work through these things, you do it long enough, it becomes almost as natural as breathing air. And if anything, you'll have to find yourself not obsessing over making too much content.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good information from that, so hopefully that's helpful. Like figuring out what is the style, right? And then the biggest thing that I want you to take away from it, though, is the why. once you figure out your why, the content portion of it becomes easier because it's really about the impact that you're trying to make. And so there's a million types of whys that are out there. Just figure out the why that is relevant to you, and like, what do I want to share with people, whether it's a vulnerability of my own struggling journey, or hey, this is how I was successful, or this is how I want people to know some of the mistakes that I made and how they can avoid it, etc. Once your why is impact, then the rest of the stuff becomes a lot easier. And shoot the content with no pressure to post it. That's helped me a lot, where like, if I'm in my head about this has to be perfect so I can post it, or I can be like, F it, I'm just gonna go off the dome and share some stuff. Oh wow, this actually came out really good, I'll post it, and it really resonates, so that's super important. So let's talk about, all right, you're now posting consistently. How did you turn that into, money? What was the first example of that turning into money? How long did it take? What was the process, et cetera?
Yeah, good question. So there's a few different ways that you can make money from content. The worst way is to rely on the AdSense. Like, I see people all the time, they're like, oh, well, TikTok pays more with ads, this platform pays this. I'm not gonna say it's irrelevant, because it could be some good money. Like, at the height of it for us, YouTube was paying us about $4,000 to $5,000 a month. And for our business, that was like money we almost didn't calculate, which I'm not saying you shouldn't calculate that. It was just, for us, we would just see it go into the account. We would almost forget and be like, oh, where does money come from? Like, oh, yeah, the YouTube thing. And so YouTube could pay well. These platforms could pay well. But in reality, you never want to build your brand or your business around the AdSense money or revenue that you generate. That should, again, be something on the side, because the platforms can change how much they're paying you at any point in time. So you never want to treat that like a business model where it's like, okay, we get this much from this platform, this is how much we're going to get, because next week they can make an announcement, oh, by the way, we're cutting it down 50% of what you're getting, or we're removing it entirely. So that, again, that should be something just on the side. Now when it comes to how we started initially, we just started as affiliates. And again, it wasn't even something I thought we would make money from. It was just, I started talking about getting into tech. People online, the first thing that happened was, and some of you might experience this, especially if your content isn't around this already, you'll experience different cycles of your audience, where you'll have some of your audience or community. It'll be people that will be excited and will trust you because they know you or they've been following you. And you'll also deal with people that'll be like, oh, there's no way this is true. Like, there's no way, you're making this stuff up. And so you'll always deal with those. And there's some other people in between that could become pretty interesting. Nevertheless, when I started at first, luckily, because my content for years and years was always about things that were positive, always educating people, even when I was broke and I had friends with money that were trying to get me into their kind of like money scheme stuff. I ain't gonna say what the stuff they were doing, but we all kind of know what it is, MLM, Forex. They were trying to get me into that stuff. They were like, Cyrus, people trust you. If you do this, man, you'll make so much money. But I was like, yeah, but I don't feel 100% sure that I will help other people make money. I was like, so it'll feel like I'm pushing something just for me to make money, and it's not gonna help people. I struggled because I almost gave in a couple times, but decided to stay where I was at. And because of that, audience community trusted me. So started talking about getting in tech, and immediately people were like, okay, well, how do I get in? And I was like, oh, I did a boot camp. Just find a boot camp. And what you find very often is that people want to do exactly what you did, and which isn't bad, but I was a bit shocked by that. I was like, okay. They were like, yeah, can you tell us about the program you did? So I told them about the program I did. Actually, shouts out to Nigel, who's just up on stage. He was actually one of my instructors in the boot camp that I did. So it's actually super crazy every time seeing him. But anyway, so I told them about the boot camp I did. Very first thing that happened was people spun the block, came back to my DM saying, hey, that thing a little pricey. Like, you ain't got no little discount you hook us up with. And I was like, I hit them up. I said, hey, can y'all give me like a discount link or something? I'm gonna tell y'all the raw story of what happened. It's gonna be pretty crazy. So I said, yo, can I, I said, yo, I got a pretty large following. I'm gonna tell people about y'all. Can you help them out with a discount? They were like, nah, nah, we good. And I was like, okay. They said, well, look, we have this link you can use. You'll get like $50 per person that signs up. I was like, yeah, but can people get a discount through me though? And then they were like, nah. And so I told my girlfriend at the time this. I said, look, we about to pull a mafia move on them. I said, I'm literally gonna promote. I said, because they don't realize what's about to happen. I was like, I'm gonna promote them. A bunch of people are gonna flood them, and then I'm gonna stop promoting them for a month and see what happens. It didn't even take 4 days. I started promoting them. So many people flooded to sign up. Their server or their website crashed. Their team was trying to figure out what happened, where did all these people come from, and of course they tracked the link back to me. I get an email now from their marketing team saying, hey, we want to collaborate with you. And so I was like, okay, cool. And they said, yeah, we want to offer you this much instead. And I said, yeah, but that's not what the issue was. I said, I want people to get a discount through you. And then so we talked it through, and eventually, they updated it, and people were able to get a discount through. So that's initially how it started. And yeah, that first month, we did about $13K. And again, I'm shocked. I'm like, hold up. I'm like, that's pretty crazy. Second month, it was about 15 or 16K. Very early on, and as you deal with different things, you're making content, you do have to think about it like a business. And there's a lot of angles we could go with that, but the angle that I really want to speak to is Jeff Bezos talks about this. Jeff Bezos and other business owners talk about whenever they receive complaints or feedback from their customers or their clients, they use it as like, man, this is free user feedback for us. They look at it as a great thing. And so I noticed very early on, it was some people that were like, oh, no, this can't be legitimate, So then I started going live on Instagram. And I was like, because what would happen is I'm like, well, there's a lot of people in tech. So I started interviewing people on Instagram. And this is when it exploded. Because now people are hearing other people's testimonies and stories. And now they're like, okay, wow, this is a thing. Like, this is really a huge thing, which at the time I didn't realize it was so hidden from our community getting in tech. I just thought, we just really weren't getting in the industry. And so, and the reason why I'm kind of like breaking it down this way is so y'all can kind of see the step-by-steps is that sometimes when you get feedback from people, that you should actually take that feedback, not internalize it like they're attacking you, but think through, is there an opportunity here for me to educate to help more people? Because if there's one person that gives a complaint, that means there's probably 10 other people or 10 times as many people that feel the same way, they just haven't vocalized it. So it always presents an opportunity for you to create some more content that would bless or benefit that other group of people as well. Honestly, by the time we launched the podcast, and again, you don't have to do a podcast. There's obviously a lot of money in that, and there's a lot of benefits to the audience and community in that. But by the time we launched the podcast, we didn't even launch it until we were doing with affiliate and sponsorships until we were doing. We didn't start talking about it until after we did over $50,000 a month, and by the time we did $70,000 is when we were like, "Yo, let's go ahead and go hard with this." I guess I feel like there's like a question there that I didn't answer. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, you answered some of it. Yeah, I think, But let's talk about podcasts. So, like, not everybody here is going to want to actually create a whole podcast. But, like, in terms of being a guest on a podcast, like Anthony O'Neill, like, how big of an impact has being even a guest on podcasts been to your business?
Man, look, I'm raw. I like to be very transparent with things. So as I mentioned, we did $70K one month. That was probably about 2 weeks after I went on his podcast. The episode hadn't aired yet. After I went on his podcast, and if anybody's seen that episode or if you ever watched that episode, you'll notice that there was no affiliate thing of mine that I promoted on there. It was just off of me being on there that other people discovered me. And also it further solidified my brand, because if anybody knows Anthony O'Neill, he comes from the Dave Ramsey camp. They're like very conservative. They don't promote fluff. And so after going on there, we had a 9-month stretch of doing over $100,000 a month. And again, that was not from me even promoting anything of my own. It was just the combination of the social proof that it brought, where there were still stragglers that were like, okay, is this still real? And then when they saw me on there, they were like, okay, this is legitimate. This is some weird thing. You can actually get a 9-to-5 job, which I don't know why people treat it like it's like, some drop shipping thing. It's like, no, these are jobs. Like, that's all they really are. They're just high paying jobs. And so, one, it gave that social proof, but two, obviously it just grew our brand significantly more. And literally a month after that is when we launched our podcast. So the timing was just exceptionally perfect. Now, I will say I found a way to get paid $15,000 for going on his show, and he didn't have to pay me. And that was something I tested out, and I figured out there's a way that you can get paid to go and speak at events or speak on radio shows or speak on podcasts or whatever, and you could get paid. And that was something I figured out very early on, and that was something we implemented within our business model that we still use to this day. And we might, if we have some time, we could talk about it a little bit later, but it's definitely something that'll help people.
Yeah, and I want to bring that up because, being on his podcast personally created a ton of opportunities for me. It got me a ton of exposure. And so when you think about podcasts, it's not always just about money. It's also about having evergreen content, showing you're a subject matter expert. So when a company Googles you, they're like, oh, they were on a podcast talking about UI, UX design. We should absolutely make sure we bring them in because not only can they bring their subject matter expertise to our company, but maybe they can shine light on our company as well. Like some of these companies are down for content creators like Microsoft and Google, et cetera, where they actually, help sponsor their employees to talk on stages, et cetera, as long as they can evangelize their material. So it's not just about making money, but career opportunities are crazy as well. Last thing I want to talk about is LinkedIn, right? So maybe you don't want to, make money being a content creator, but talk about like LinkedIn and what kind of opportunities are there for being just a thought leader on LinkedIn, even if you're not trying to monetize it.
Yeah, there's a lot. So like he mentioned, so first off, making content on LinkedIn is amazing for career security. So we know there's no such thing as job security, but you can have career security, where when you're making content online, one, it raises your stock value with the company you're at. Like he just touched on briefly, when I was making content on LinkedIn, my company was like, hey, can you in a couple of your posts mention us? And I was like, I can, but I mean, what we talking about? It's got to be something going on. And so we ended up setting up some deal. And so one, there's that. But two, it raised your stock within your company. It was actually this lady at my first company. The reason why I started making content specifically on LinkedIn, because my content on LinkedIn at the time was way different than my content on Instagram. My content on Instagram was about getting in tech. My content on LinkedIn was, the day-to-day of working in tech, some of the issues you deal with, the funny moments, things like that. But that content raised my stock to where when you do things like that, you will have recruiters, hiring leaders constantly reaching out to you because they're always looking for professionals. And it's like, okay, what makes you stand out from other people oftentimes is your personality. So there's a lot of people that have the education, but what makes you different? What really makes you stand out? What makes you likable? Because as we know, people like to buy from who they like, and ultimately a hire is them buying into you. So making the content online was incredible when it came to opportunities within my company, but also when it came to my career security. And that's why myself and I have several other friends in the industry where we talk about this often. We're like, man, if God forbid, knock on wood, but it's like, okay, if a layoff happens, we're really not worried. It's like because we have so many other opportunities in our back pocket of companies that want us. And it's not necessarily, I want to stress this. Of course, it's important for us to kill it and crush it at our jobs. It's very important for us to kill it and crush it. Try to over-exceed if you can. Nevertheless, when you have some type of brand or something you've built up, that's something that AI can't take from you. That's something that, I'll be very real, people could have significantly more knowledge and more qualifications than you, but you will still get chosen and picked over them. And that's happened for me countless times. That's happened for me, if we want to be raw, that's happened with me where it's been myself who has no degree, no longevity in the industry, where I've gotten picked over white counterparts that had degrees and had significantly more experience, if just using that extreme example. And so just to kind of like highlight the importance and the value of having a professional brand and posting things on LinkedIn. And like you said, it's evergreen content. People will constantly find you, constantly discover you.
Yeah, so there's so much more we could get into, but unfortunately we're out of time. One thing that I wanted to bring up as another way of, you impacting people, and this is going to be the last thing we say, and then we're going to head out, is talk a little bit about scaling tech for those in the room that are looking to get connected to recruiters, hiring managers, et cetera, if they aren't necessarily where they want to be in their career right now.
Actually, 1 second. You have time for Q&A because I know people have questions. So make this like 10 seconds, right?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, and then leave. You have about 5 minutes for a Q&A, okay?
Okay, perfect. Good stuff. Yeah, so for those that know my brand, y'all know I've collaborated with a lot of different amazing boot camps, some pretty mediocre that we, ain't gonna speak about that. And so one thing that we've noticed is that really the problem isn't education. And even with really great boot camps and programs, the problem isn't career services. Now it's getting that gap between getting internal referrals. And what we noticed with our brand, because of the podcast and other cool things we've gotten to do, we're like, we have a crazy network of recruiters and hiring managers that constantly work and collaborate with us. So we have something where it's job placement assistance, where we have recruiters and hiring managers across 10 of the top tech companies in the world, whether we're talking AWS, Microsoft, Google, SAP, Salesforce, so on and so forth, where there's job placement assistance. So if you're a person where you already have the education and the skills, maybe you've done a quality boot camp already or you've already went to college, then we have job placement assistance for that. But then also we have instructors where if you're a person that needs to go 0 to 100, where you don't have the education, but you also want the job placement assistance, God bless you, then there's that as well. So that's something that we had launched recently in collaboration with different boot camps and programs to really ensure people are getting interviews with the recruiters and hiring managers.
Yeah, and that's a dope evolution of where his brand started, and then all the connections and the visibility, how he's able to make that a service. So, question and answers. I know we probably opened up some questions in your mind. We're going to go ladies first, and then we're going to go with this gentleman over here.
Hi. So I heard you talk about a lot of topics as you built your business, and as you mentioned, getting into tech. It's very broad, and a lot of what you talked about was very broad, and you talked about, you captured how to get paid speaking at events. You talked about, I went to podcasts, and you mentioned your business plan. Just to bring it all kind of back central, when you're talking to somebody new that's trying to go down that path, how would you advise them to orchestrate that business plan? Is it something that you did alone? Is it something that required a team? Is it something that kind of like snowballed? How did you go about that path?
So the said person I'm speaking to, are they in tech already, or are they trying to get in tech? And they're also thinking about they're in tech already. Okay. Yeah, so if they're in tech, the first thing I would say is to honestly copy the model of what we see happening in the tech industry. We want to copy the lean startup model, or MVP, minimum viable product. Don't try to do too much at once. I am incredibly happy that we started from going live on Instagram with people before we launched the podcast, because we didn't start spending money. We started already making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month just from going live on Instagram and user-generated content. So that alone, I was able to pay my team and have high-level production from the start versus having to pull from the money I was making from my tech job. So if you're in tech and you're making, let's say, $10,000 a month. I know usually we talk annually, but I think like in months now. Let's say you're making $10,000 a month working in tech, and you want to have this high-level production. You don't want to do that if you haven't figured out how to make money first, and realistically, if you haven't even started making money first. And so I would say start extremely lean, extremely small. Realistically, I would say just yourself. Maybe hire 1 or 2 virtual assistants, that live in a place where the dollar goes a lot further for them. And so that way they can do things like help with your social media, help respond to certain things, as well as maybe do certain outreach stuff for you, curating content, stuff like that. So you want to start incredibly lean, and honestly, you want to wait to see what's hitting and what's working, and then build from there. You never want to build from money that you don't have. You want to take from money that you have that you're making and then pour that into it and just kind of scale from there.
All right, one more question.
That and the strategy of how you did that?
Yeah, definitely. So the first time I did it, it was a straight up theory. I know God had to get this to me. Now, I'm not going to say the way I did it was the way God told me to do it, but I know that God gave me the initial idea. And so it's honestly the Anthony O'Neill podcast. It was the first time that I tested it out where I was like, man, I think I can make money going on there. Because obviously going on his show, I knew he was going to be promoting something. So I was okay, well, I can't tell him, hey, I'm trying to promote this thing, whatever. I was like, man, so how do I do that? So I decided, I said, well, I'm going on there. I can just find a brand online, and I could just tell them, hey, I'm going to promote you on his platform. What are you willing to pay me? Now, that's the kind of idea that I believe God gave me. Now, I decided to kind of sauce it up a little bit. I ain't saying God gave me this part. But I just wasn't sure if it was going to work. So I decided to pit brands against each other. So I sent out an email to all these different brands. I said, hey, I'm going on this show. I have this many followers. They have this many followers. Combined, it's like an audience of this many people. Your competitor has already agreed to this deal. Wink, wink, even though they really didn't. I was like, your competitor already agreed to this deal. Now, I don't do it like this anymore. I want to be clear. I said, your competitor's already agreed to this deal. And basically, I said, hey, for $10,000, I will promote your brand 3 times on his platform. And what typically happens is no brand wants to be promoted alongside their competitor. They were like, how much can we pay you for you to only promote us and not promote our competitor? Now, I kind of folded, and I just took $15,000. Realistically, I could have asked for more, because technically, if you're promoting 2 brands, that's $20,000. I should have said like $25,000 or something like that. Whatever. Nevertheless, that's what I did, and I kept doing that. So if anybody's seen me like on like any major large platform that's relatively my size or larger, before I go on the platform, like anybody here is familiar with American Income, the guy does the street interviews and stuff. All right, so anyway, he was my neighbor in Miami. He's like super popular. He knows all the super popular Miami influencer people, and most people pay him about $5,000 to $10,000 for him to interview them. But every now and again, in between interviews, he just wants some content, especially to cross over with somebody with a large brand like mine. He'll just do one for free, just for content. So he kept hitting me up like, bro, I'm trying to interview you. And he was like, bro, I've never felt like I'm begging somebody to interview them for free. So then I told him, I said, bro, hold up. I haven't been responding because I'm trying to get a bag for both of us. I was like, so I'm going to get a bag. And I didn't have to do this for him. But just being a person I was, because I wanted a longer relationship with him, I hit up a brand. I said, hey, I'm about to go on this guy's thing, about to be interviewed by him. You know, and the brand paid me $30,000. I told him, and I kept it 100 with him. I said, yo, they're paying me $30,000. Let's split it down the middle. You get $15K, I get $15K. We run it like that. And so you can, and let me flip it this way, because I know some of y'all are thinking like, okay, well, I don't have a large brand, so how do I do that if I don't have a large brand? You could literally find these larger platforms, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a street interview, you could find these larger platforms. You could see what their rate is to interview them. And if you don't have the money to pull out of pocket and pay them, now you know their rate. You can now hit up brands and say, hey, I'm about to be interviewed by this person. Even if the interview isn't set up yet, as long as you know that it just costs money, you could be interviewed by the person. You tell the brands, hey, I'm about to be interviewed by this person. I would love to have you sponsor it and promote you during the interview. And of course, you have to communicate to them how you would like promote them or sponsor it, or how you would promote it with them. But just set it up that way. Many brands would gladly do that. And now they give you the money. Many times they'll probably pay you 50% in advance, or they won't pay you until after. Either way, they'll give you the money, and you use that money to pay the person, and then obviously you keep the rest of the money, you know, for yourself. And that's like an easy hack for those that don't have a larger following.
All right, so I wish we could go to another question, but I'm pretty sure we have to go to the next speaker. But I would love for everybody to follow what he's doing, follow what I'm doing, so you can actually see it practically in action. And then we'd like to stay in touch with you. So if you have any questions from this panel, feel free to hit us up as well. So can everybody pull out their phones right now? All right, I'm looking at all of you, so pull out your phones. All right, this is the payoff for our time. We really appreciate it. And we're also very resourceful people. Like, we definitely have some benefits to you following us. So go to Instagram real quick, all right, and let's go to his first, since he did a lot of speaking. It's I'm Just Cyrus. IMJUSTCYRUS. So you can actually see, like, how he's making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a month, at one point $100,000 a month. So you can actually see that in action, all right? And then if you guys want, let's see what I'll give away to you guys for, following me. I'll send you a list of every single Black Tech event that's happening coming up. And also have a free ebook on, different aspects of breaking into tech, stuff like that. I might send you some other stuff that's cool too, but if you want to follow me and see the different conferences I'll be at and the different resources that I connect you with, you can connect with me at Dr. J, D-O-C-T-A-J. So Dr. J, D-O-C-T-A-J. And definitely check out his podcast, Tech is the New Black, Big Tech Energy podcast. And the last thing I'll say is, I help people like you that don't necessarily have a brand or maybe a following get on these type of tech stages. So if you're interested in getting on tech stages to grow your connections with other speakers, with the sponsors, which are the hiring companies, as well as to help build your brand and your call to action, feel free to hit me up in the DMs as well, and I could talk about how to get you on stage as well. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Look forward to talking to you all.